So most MMO players know the pain of starting a new MMO and being completely overwhelmed from all of the different stats in the game, not knowing if they are good or bad. And in Throne of Liberty you have also plenty of different stats, and to be competitive you need to understand what they do and how they work. And with that, welcome to the 4th episode of the starter series for Throne and Liberty. In today's session we will have a breakdown of all of the combat stats and TL. If you are just interested in certain stats, you can use the chapters to jump to the specific stat you are interested in. But if you haven't played TL before, I would highly suggest you to watch the whole video, because some stats might behave differently from what you think. So let's start right away and have a look onto our weapon specific stats, starting with base damage. So base damage is a super important stat, because all of your spells scale off the stats. If you look into the description of a spell, you will always see a multiplier of your base damage. So if you use a spell, the system rolls between your min and your max damage and multiplies it by the spell multiplier. So high base damage is always really important. Next up we have attack speed. Attack speed is also one of the most important stats in the game. It not only lets your auto attacks come faster out, it also lets your spells come faster out. That counts for instant spells or for spells with cast time, and also for animation of the spells itself. Attack speed allows you to get your rotations way faster out, and it's just crucial stats in many builds. So next we have range. Range is pretty self-explaining, it's just the overall attack range for all of your spells and your auto attacks. These are the 3 weapon specific stats you have for each weapon, but some weapons have also some special stats. The first one is the base damage and the weapon attack chance of the offhand weapon. These you only have for the dual weapons, so for the dagger and the crossbow. So with those weapons you have a chance to deal a second time your attack. That can be a spell or an auto attack. So that means if you use for example the dagger spell Brutal Incision, then this spell can come out 2 times. One time with the right dagger and one time with your left dagger. The second time it uses the base damage of the offhand weapon, but this will be always close to the main base damage. And the last special weapon stat is the shield block chance. This stat you only have for sword and shield, and it gives you just a chance to block a percentage of all enemies' attacks. So for every attack an enemy is doing to you, you have a chance to block a part of the damage. Okay, so now we understood the stats of the first bracket. Keep in mind that those stats are always influencing the attacks from the respective weapon. So if you use a spell from the dagger, it uses the base damage and attack speed from that weapon, and so on. And also all of these stats can differ between all weapons, even from weapons from the same type and quality. So really be careful here by the selection of your weapon. Okay, before we go further, just a quick reminder, if you like the content and you want to support me, don't forget to subscribe. I'm almost at 1k subs. Thanks guys. Okay, but before we come to the next stats, you will see that a lot of those stats are split into the 3 main different attacks in the game. So magic, range and melee attacks. So I won't repeat this here all the time, but obviously these stats only influence the specific attack types. Okay, let's come to defense. Defense is pretty simple. You have that in most MMOs. It lowers the overall percentage you are getting from enemy attacks. That means auto attacks and spells, just everything. It's a percentage factor which will be calculated based on your armor value. Next we have hit and evasion. So if we look at hit, we also have to look at evasion at the same time. Evasion gives you the chance to evade all attacks from your enemy. That also counts for spells like stuns, pulls and even debuffs. And hit is just the counterpart to it. It allows you to actually hit your spells and attacks. Everyone will stack evasion, especially in the early game in PvP. So as a DPS you will need quite a bit of hit to overcome that. Otherwise you will just not be able to hit people. Next up we have crit and endurance. Works exactly the same as hit and evasion. So crit chance gives you the chance to crit, and endurance lowers the chance for the enemy to crit you. So what means crit in Throne of Liberty? As mentioned in the beginning, for calculation of the spell damage, the base damage is taken. If you attack crits, then always the max damage is taken. And if you don't crit, then it rolls between your min and your max damage again. Crit is also a really valuable stat, especially for certain builds, which rely on critting a lot. Endurance on the other hand can be nice, but from my perspective it's better in the late game than in the early game. So I would really recommend you stacking evasion over endurance early on. But whatever you do, either way stack fully endurance or fully evasion. Next up we have skill damage boost and skill damage resistance. Both again really important stats because they make your spells stronger or give you defense against spells, and that even by a certain percentage. Skill damage boost also hires your heals, so keep that in mind. And since spells is most of your damage in TL, having just a percentage increase of that damage is crazy good, and of course then also the other way around. Okay, let's come to bonus damage and damage reduction. Bonus damage is just added damage to all of your attacks. So that means if you have 100 bonus damage and deal 2000 damage with a spell, then you would deal 2100 damage. But if you have 4 projectiles with a spell, then each spell gets 100 bonus damage. This is really just good if you do a lot of attacks, so for example as a crossbow player. Damage reduction does that exactly the other way around. So it's good versus players with a lot of attacks, but not so good against heavy hitting players. Now let's come to buff duration and debuff duration. So let's start with buff duration. So this affects all of your positive buffs that you give yourself. That means for example the poison that you make on your daggers, or even the camouflage cloak which makes you invisible. So suddenly you are not 8 seconds invisible anymore, but instead now 12 seconds. This can be really powerful in certain builds. Debuff duration on the other hand reduces all enemy debuffs that are casted on you. Okay, next up we have heavy attack chunks and evasion. Again just a giga broken stat for everyone. Heavy attacks lets you hit your attacks double. So similar as offhand weapon chance, but these are not 2 attacks, this is 1 attack that hits hard. If you heavy hit, you see it on the 2x and then the damage number. In my example here, 2 times 5883 damage. So this can be really massive. And this counts also for heals, so also your heals can come out doubled. Just a giga broken stat. Heavy attack evasion on the other hand, you can only get through max guild level and if you're occupying the castle. So ignore that stat at the beginning. Okay, let's come to the next bracket in the top right. Here you have some stuff like max health, max mana, max stamina and also Regen for all of those, which is all pretty clear I guess. Mana cost efficiency reduces just a percentage wise your mana cost. Can also be really good on some builds because mana is a problem in this game, even in the late game. Movement speed also clear, except that you can also jump further with more movement speed. Cooldown speed obviously reduces your cooldowns. Here I just want to say that the diminishing returns are here quite high, so that means you can't go for full cooldown build. I tried that out already and I can tell you that the returns are not high enough. But we will go deeper into that in a future video. Next we have attack speed. We already talked about it. This is just the additional attack speed you get through items and so on, which will impact the attack speed from both of your weapons. Skill heal, incoming heal, amateur heal and recovery crystal heal is also pretty clear and self-explanatory I would say. It's just the amount you heal or get healed. So for the next page we need to understand that we have also a lot of different spells and effects that are marked as different attacks. So for example, the spell Cursed Nightmare is marked as a sleep. What we can see on this page is now that we have a sleep chance and a sleep resistance. Sleep chance helps you hitting that spell and sleep resistance helps you that the spell misses you. And that you have for all of the different spells. This can become really important in the late game. Okay, on the next page you see a lot of stats that are only relevant for PvE, where you have bonus damage and resistance against all monster types. In almost all scenarios a really useless stat. Some people like to farm stuff with that in the early game, but yeah, I don't know, I wouldn't recommend that and ignore that stat. Then we have all the stats that we've talked about in the beginning, crit, hit, evasion and so on, also just for PvE bosses and also only for PvP. So here the principle is the same, only that it's just valid in PvP or PvE. So now we have almost talked about all the stats in TL, except for the main stats: strength, dexterity, wisdom and perception. So first we have to understand that all of these make our base damage higher, but they influence them differently. Strength and perception hires only the max damage, and dexterity and wisdom hires the min and the max damage. Additionally, you can increase with the base stats most of the stats we have just talked about. So strength hires your overall defense and especially max life. Dexterity hires your attack speed, crit chance and evasion. Wisdom hires your max mana, mana rec, as well as cooldown reduction and debuff duration. And Perception hires your ability to hit your spells and attacks, and increases also your buff duration. In addition, each base stat can give you so-called achievement effects. These are just bonus stats which you get by hitting a certain threshold by each individual main stat. These bonus stats can nicely add up and be really powerful. Okay, but for now that's all you need to know for the stats in Throne of Liberty. In the future we will have deep dives into those stats so you really understand how to min-max your gear. But for the beginning that's more than enough. If further questions are coming up, just ask me in the comment section. And don't forget to subscribe and like. Thanks for watching and see you on the next one.